Hello and welcome. In this video we'll be taking a look at the Doppler GPS navigation system in the UH-60L Blackhawk mod. Now, just a little bit on the Doppler navigation. It's a self-contained aircraft navigation system and it uses Doppler effect radar interaction with the Earth in dead reckoning to calculate for navigation. Now, one of the main reasons why helicopters these days use Doppler navigation is the fact that it's unjammable, and because it runs off its own back, it doesn't need external factors like beacons or any sort of radio frequencies to go off of, and also works in if you're off the grid as such. So if you're in places where there's no GPS signals and that sort of thing, your Doppler navigation will still work. Now, it is mainly military helicopters that use this type of navigation these days, but with advances in technology, it's not just Doppler, the pulse Doppler that they use for this navigation. It's now being combined with GPS and INS/GPS systems. So just to make it that little bit more accurate, and then when things go off the grid, you still have that Doppler to fall back on to continue your navigation if you end up getting no signals at all. So really, that's a quick summary of what Doppler navigation is. So now we can get into the flight plan of things. So obviously you can see I'm in Mission Editor, and you need to make a flight plan for this to work. As you can see, I start off from Vajjani Airbase, then straight up to Vajjani Village, up to Dido Lilo, or Dido Lilo, however you pronounce that one, over to Tbilisi, then to Kumisi, Rustavi, Akali Samgori, and then back into Vajjani Airbase. All of this will be done via the Doppler GPS navigation system. Now, each section or waypoint of the flight plan has been tuned, so I have a maximum of 2,500 feet, practically just slightly over on that one, to fly it from. And then once I get back round to Akali Samgori, I will switch over to ILS and then guide myself into the airbase via ILS navigation. It's an idea to name your waypoints. As you can see, I've gone in and done that. So Vajjani, I mean, you don't have to name them the villages, obviously. If you've got a mission and you've got codes for each section, then obviously you can name them those, and that will bring up an abbreviation or part of it up on the actual screen of the navigation system. So yeah, like I say, you need to have a flight plan, so make sure that you go into each waypoint and set your altitude. Don't have to do speed, but naming it is a good idea, otherwise you end up with some random Ms01, Ms02 as your sort of default naming of each waypoint, which isn't a bad thing, but if you want to know where you are on the map as well, then naming them is a good idea. So let's jump in the helicopter and have a look at the system. Right, so I've initiated a cold start. Now all that's left for me to do is to switch on the Doppler GPS navigation system. That's located on the center console, just here. Now we're going to turn it on with the bottom switch. So if we turn it through to MGRS, which is Military Grid Reference System, we'll right click, it will bring the system online. Now you can use latitude and longitude. The two differences are basically measurement systems. MGRS is metric, so it will use kilometers, meters and kilometers an hour. Latitude longitude is imperial and uses knots, nautical miles and feet. Now I'm old school, so I shall use latitude longitude. As you can see at the top here, the system's come online, and we need to get into the next section, so just press enter. You're into the DAFF section of the startup. Is everything okay? Yes, press enter, and now we're in our flight plan. Now if I bring that back to 0, this will increase and decrease will change your waypoints. Obviously increase will move them to the next one, decrease will bring them back. So I'll bring back to 0, which is my current position. Now we're on to sub modes. So wind UTC data. This will show wind speed and wind direction. I've got none of that implemented in the mission at the moment, but that's where it would be if you wanted to know that information. You can see it says more there. You press enter, it'll bring up the month, the day, the year and the time in game, obviously, because we're not in 2016 and it certainly isn't 8:23 in the morning. So yeah, that's the UTC section of it. You press enter again and it'll bring you to the options. The last three you can ignore for the moment as they're not implemented, but number one, if you want to do multi-crew, you'll go into there, and that's how you would initiate that, but I'll cover that in a different video. And pressing enter again will bring you back to the start. Now if we switch to the next section, and this is cross track and track error. This is basically a VOR to from, but in digital form. At the moment we're sitting, I've got waypoint 0 selected, so there's nowhere for me to go. But if we change that to waypoint 1, you can see that the arrow is pointing away. If it was behind me, it'd be pointing away, downwards, obviously. Cross track, to get back on that, is 0.02 nautical miles, and the track error, we're off by 42 degrees. You can press enter, but nothing will happen, even though it says more there. Next is ground speed and track. Ground speed, we're not moving, so it's 0. Our current track is 319 degrees, and the bottom part there is not initiated, and if you press enter again, nothing happens. Next section is present position, or PP, and that will give you your present position in coordinates. Press enter, it'll give you our present position in feet. So yeah, that's just showing our current altitude. Press enter again and bring you back to coordinates. Next is distance and bearing to the waypoint, next waypoint, so 0.05 nautical miles, 0.01 degrees, and it will take us 4.6 minutes to get to. Press enter. This part is not initiated, and I believe that may be our whole flight plan in time in idle. So apparently it will still take us 5 hours 38 minutes and 15 seconds to get to get round the whole flight plan in idle. so that's interesting. Press enter again and it'll bring you back to the front page. Next is waypoint target. In here is where you will edit waypoints. Again, this will just show you your current waypoint position in coordinates and again in altitude. Press enter again, bring you back to the front page. Last one is datum and route. None of this is implemented at the moment, but you will be able to, or it's hoping that you'll be able to make your own flight plans in game instead of on mission editor. So that to look forward to. Press enter again and again. Right, so just going to quickly show you, if you wanted to edit a waypoint, what you would do is you go in, got Vaziani village, you press keyboard. If you wanted to change the name, so you press keyboard, and old school way of selecting letters would have been pressing that keypad button the amount of times you wanted to get to the letter. Not so in this system. What you do is you press either letter left, letter mid, letter right. So say you wanted B, you select letter mid, push 1, and B would come up in that section there. And then, I don't know, say you wanted to write bet, and then you'd press letter mid again, press 2 to get the E, and then again letter mid and 7 to get the T. What you do then is you press enter. If it's valid, it will flash while you're entering it in. If it's valid, it will stop flashing. But you can go in and edit your waypoints in there. I won't do that now because it's pretty much ready to go. So yeah, so with that we can actually get going with our flight. So if I go back to cross track, no, actually I'm going to go with distance and bearing. So we'll leave that at distance and bearing, and all of the information will be fed into the HSI VSI. So what we do is go over here to Doppler GPS, make sure that's lit up, and then we press nav. All the information is fed into the computer, into the instruments, 8.4 kilometers away from Vaziani, and we're basically going to go with waypoint, the number 1 bearing, sorry. So yeah, and then we'll follow the roll and pitch guidance bars here. So just to reiterate, if the Doppler GPS and nav are incorrectly, then you'll see that the flag in the distance to waypoint has disappeared. As you can see, we've got 8.4 kilometers on there, and the number 1 bearing pointer will have shifted to the direction you need to fly, and in the VSI the pitch and roll bars will have shifted. Now you're going to want to zero out your altitude. As I'm coming back to the Vaziani airbase, it makes sense for me to zero out now, so that I have the same ground elevation for when I come back into land. You're going to want to set your decision height low and high. I've set my low to 100 and my high to 200, so that once I get below 100 foot, my decision height indicator will come on there. I'm going to show you the helmet mounted display, so if we right click here, the information from the flight plan is in. I have a bearing indicator there of the chevron pointing, telling me to go into that direction. But to go over the rest of it, you've got your heading tape here, or bearing tape, whatever you want to call it. Next you have your distance and bearing to waypoint here, engine 1 and 2 temperatures, your ground speed. Airspeed will appear up here above ground speed, but that's ground speed. Engine 1 and 2 torque here, your display page, master caution will all display just above here. This is your inclinometer or turn slip indicator, your pitch ladder obviously, radar altimeter just here, so that will show this bit here all the way up to 1,500 feet, and you've got to decide which is what is what from there. Your radar altitude, which will appear here, your vertical speed marker, which is this arrow here, your combined vertical speed and radar altitude scale here, barometric altimeter obviously, obviously like I said, your bearing to waypoint, and your vertical velocity indicator is this diamond here, and that will shift obviously as you're flying. So that will give you indications from your pitch and roll. So that's the helmet mounted display over with. One thing I will mention about the display, apart from the fact that I'm not a fan of it, it's just too in your face, is that the bearing to waypoint chevron and the number 1 bearing arrow here, they are off slightly from each other. So what I have to do is, if I'm flying with the helmet mounted display, is to try and get the number 1 arrow and the bearing chevron here either side of where I'm heading. So I will have that slightly to the right, and that obviously over the other side slightly to the left, just to make sure that I know I'm definitely going where I need to go. Because if I end up following one on its own, which is normally the more accurate one, I will end up there. But if I end up following the chevron arrow, I tend to be off slightly. So that's why, another reason why I don't really fly with a helmet mounted display, but I will fly to the first waypoint with it on, just so that you can get an impression of what it does and how the different bits and pieces change. So let's get our trim sorted, and I'll be a little bit shaky to start with, but once I get going, everything will be fine. And another thing just to point out is that waypoint change isn't automatic. You will need to change it manually using increase, but I'll show you once we get to the waypoint what we need to do. So let's get this helicopter off the ground. Okay. Not my most graceful takeoff, I will admit. Now we're up in the air, and we can turn to our bearing, and make our way to Vasjani village. Okay, we're on heading basically with the helmet mounted display, but if we look down at our number 1 arrow here, you can see it's off to the left. So if I just reel that back in again, as you can see, as closer I get to the center of it, okay, so we're on heading again. If we look down to our HSI, you can see it's way off. So that's another reason why I don't fly helmet mounted display. So now we're over the top of Vasjani, we will press the increase. There we go. I'm going to turn this helmet mounted display off because it's irritating. Now we want to change the course arrow to where the number 1 is, so we can get our steering information and on our way to the next waypoint, which is Dido Lido or Dido Lido or Dido Lido. I don't know how to pronounce that one, so I'm sorry if I butchered that. Keep this angle of bank. Okay, I overcooked that one slightly. You need to be gentle with the aircraft. It's not good to be aggressive with it. Bring the altitude down a bit as well. That's our village of interest there. 4.8 nautical miles away. Again, bring the altitude down, way too high. And 3.2. Choose the next waypoint, and again move the course needle to where we need to go, and we're going to use that steering information to get onto the number 1 bearing needle. There we go, and we're heading towards Tbilisi. Okay, so we're 2 nautical miles away from Tbilisi, and again change the waypoint, change our course needle to there, and we start banking now. We don't want to go over Tbilisi. Okay, just make sure that course needle is where we need it. Two nautical miles out from Community, and again change the waypoint, change the course needle, and turn. Keeping that roll indicator in central as you possibly can. Once you're on the correct waypoint or correct course, it will tell you when to change. Right, so we're about 7 kilometers out from Rustavi. I need to enter the ILS frequency for Vazjani, 108.75. Okay. You can see Vazjani Air Base over there. We'll flick over to our next waypoint now. And change our pointer. Course needle, I should say. And we're over the top Rustavi. And keep the roll indicator in the middle. And now we can level out as we're central. So once I get to my next waypoint, which is 6 kilometers away, I will be turning off the Doppler GPS and switching over to ILS, so we can work our way into Vazjani Air Base. Okay, so we're 2 kilometers away from there. Turn off Doppler GPS, switch on ILS mode, and you know that you've got a valid frequency in because the ILS light has lit up. And we want the heading of the runway, which is 315. So we can turn our course needle to 315. I've probably missed the end of the runway. Yep. So we'll come back on ourselves. So this is why it's key to be prepared, which I was not for that section. Okay, so we'll bring ourselves back in line with the runway and put ourselves on 315. As you can see, the collective indicator there is telling me to keep it more central. So throttle is up, gone too far, so now it's a battle of keeping everything central. I do want to lose some height and speed. Well, that was graceful, wasn't it? Well, let that be a lesson on how not to bring a Blackhawk into land. Still, I'm not a master at this yet, and I don't think I ever will be. But yeah, that's using the Doppler GPS navigation system in the Blackhawk. I hope that's helped. Well, if I can get this thing down on the ground. There we go. Oh my god, it's taken all my concentration. And we're down. Thank God for that. Right, sorry about that. So yeah, that's using the Doppler GPS navigation system in the Community UH-60L Blackhawk. A little bit to take in there, but once you know what you're doing, it's not difficult at all. It's a lot easier than I thought it would be. But yeah, anyway, if you've got this far, thank you for watching, and as always, thank you. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.